Okay. I'm not sure. Did Karen Fisher want to say something, or?
No, you can go ahead and begin. I believe staff is ready to go. So
Okay.
you can begin whenever you're ready.
All right, very good. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Dental Assisting Council meeting. My name is Jerry Fowler, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Dental Assisting Council. Today is Thursday, November 18th, 2021. This Dental Assisting Council meeting is being held via WebEx. In accordance with Government Code 11133, this meeting will be held by teleconference with no physical locations. For all those who wish to participate, please log on to the WebEx website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference and not the microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. Since this meeting is being conducted via WebEx, I will ask all Dental Assisting Council members and speakers to announce themselves by name before speaking for clarity of the official record. All Dental Assisting Council members are able to unmute themselves to speak during the meeting. Please place yourself back on mute when not speaking to reduce background noise for all participants. When making a motion, please use the raise hand feature to be called upon and then verbally state your motion or second so staff can identify the motion and second for the meeting record. During a discussion on an agenda item, please use the raise hand feature if you want to speak, and I will call on you. Following such online meeting etiquette will ensure the best audio quality for everyone. During each call for comments from Dental Assisting Council members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments can be accommodated or heard before proceeding with the agenda. We will be taking a 15-minute break in the morning. We do not anticipate this meeting going past noon, but in the event that it does, we will be taking a 30-minute lunch break if necessary. This is an official meeting for the Dental Assisting Council. The Council welcomes public comments on any item in the agenda, and it is the Council's intent to ask for public comments prior to the Council taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comment shortly. When called upon, the moderator will unmute the microphone of the individual, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude the public comment. After the 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with testimony already provided, please just state your name and that you are in support of any comments previously provided. I would now like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during the WebEx meeting.
This is the moderator of the meeting. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the Council reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on and members of the public can indicate that they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment" in the question box, which is typically in the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. The individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. At the conclusion of the 2 minutes, the individual's microphone will be muted and we will move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the Council. Such inquiries submitted using this feature will not be answered. When making your comment, please make sure the comment is directed at the host in the dropdown. While you are free to express criticism or negative views for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the Council. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. Finally, when the council members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to please mute their microphones. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder.
I would like to call this meeting to order and ask the board staff to call the roll.
Good morning, DAC members. Wilbert Rumbawa calling the roll. Fowler.
Present.
Fowler present. Miyazaki. Miyazaki present. Olagi.
Olagi present.
Olagi present. Pacheco. Pacheco present. Reed Espinoza.
Reed Espinoza present.
Reed Espinoza present. Quorum has been established.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to agenda item 2, public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any public comments on items not on the agenda? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
And at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. All right, now we're going to move on to agenda item 3, discussion and possible action on the August 19, 2021 meeting minutes. Is there any council member discussion? And please use the raised hand feature. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Please use the raised hand feature to be called upon and then verbally state your motion or second. Okay. Kara?
Kara Miyazaki, I make a motion to accept the minutes for August 19, 2021.
Very good. Tracy Reed Espinoza, are you seconding?
Notes from August 19, 2021 minutes.
Thank you. Please go ahead and lower your hands. All right, the motion is to accept the meeting minutes as is for the August 2021 meeting. With Kara Miyazaki as she motioned and Tracy Reed Espinoza seconded. Tracy, I see your hand up. Do you have a question?
No, I don't. I'm just trying to get my hand lowered here real quick.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah, let's see. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, well, thank you. Board staff, can you please call the roll and record votes for this agenda item?
What? The motion is to accept the meeting minutes. Jerry Fowler,
Aye.
Miyazaki,
Misaki, aye.
Olagi, Pacheco,
Pacheco, aye.
Reed Espinoza,
Aye.
five ayes. The motion is passed.
Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 4, update on dental assisting educational program and course applications and reevaluations. I'm going to ask Tina Valerie, Chief of Licensing Administration, to present this agenda item.
Good morning, this is Tina Valerie. Thank you, Ms. Fowler, for the introduction. I am the Chief of Administration and Licensing for the board. Agenda item 4 is the update on dental assisting educational program and course application and reevaluation. This memo begins on page 7 of your meeting materials and provides an overview of the new dental assisting program and course applications submitted to the board. Table 1 shows the total number of program and course applications approved. Table 2 shows the number of RDA and RDA-EF program site visits conducted. And Table 3 provides the status of the applications received by program or course type. Each of these tables provide data for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 through September 30th, along with the prior 3 fiscal years. At the bottom of page 8 of your materials, Table 4 shows the total number of approved programs and courses by type. Beginning on page 9, you will find Table 5, which identifies the approved programs and courses by name and type of program through September 30th, along with this is for calendar year 2021. A reevaluation update will be provided at the next meeting in 2022, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any council member comments? Please use your raise hand feature. Seeing no raised hands, are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
And at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please click that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, now we'll move on to agenda item 5, update regarding council member vacancies and recruitment. I'm going to ask Executive Officer Fisher to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fowler. Again, my name is Karen Fisher, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Dental Board. We're now reviewing agenda item 5, which is located on page 11 of your meeting materials. And it's the update regarding the council member vacancies and recruitment. So since the last Dental Assistant Council meeting, 2 members resigned from the council. That's Ms. Melina Casares and Michelle Jawad. Both had other obligations, if you will, that did not allow them to be able to continue to participate in these meetings. Both reluctantly resigned, and their resignation was expected. We posted a recruitment notice on the board's website. We also notified the Stakeholder Association to ask if they would be willing to also put the word out that we're recruiting for 2 positions for a registered dental assistant employed clinically in a private dental practice, public safety net, or dental health care clinic. So that pretty much is the end of this report. In the event that the subcommittee of Ms. Olagi and Ms. Pacheco are unable to find what they believe to be suitable candidates to bring before the board at the February meeting, we will keep the recruitment notice open as a continuous recruitment until such time as those 2 positions can be filled. Are there any questions from the council members? Thank you, Vice Chair Fowler. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Now we're going to move on to agenda item 6, update on dental assisting examination statistics. I'm going to ask Ms. Valerie to present this agenda item.
I would like to begin by pointing out that the data for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 in relation to the OA examination is reported incorrectly in your memo. As mentioned in the previous board meetings, the Office of Professional Examination Services, or OPES, conducted an occupational analysis of the orthodontic assistant practice, which resulted in an update being made to the OA examination. On September 1st, 2021, the OA exam was modified to adjust the examination content, and during the initial release of a new examination, examinee scores are held pending evaluation and validation of the preliminary passing scores established. The OA exam scores were released in late October and may not be reflected accurately in this memo as it was prepared prior to the release of scores. I apologize for this and will provide the updated information at the next meeting in 2022. Agenda item 6 begins on page 12 of your meeting materials and provides the examination statistics for the RDA combined general, written, and law and ethics exam. The the RDA-EF written, clinical, and practical exams, the orthodontic assistant permit written, and the dental sedation assistant permit written exam. The data is for fiscal years 2021 and 2022 through September 30th, along with the prior 3 fiscal years, and provides a breakdown of first-time and repeat test takers by exam type. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any council member comments? Please use the raised hand feature. Kara Misaki, your hand is raised.
Yeah, Miyazaki. I'm looking at the pass rates, and I know that there's concern about the low pass rates for the RDA written exam. And looking at the dental board strategic plan, I know it's going to be discussed possibly today. And I just wanted to mention that there's part of the strategic plan on 1.3 is identify and partner with stakeholders to examine problems and challenges in dental assisting and whether there's a workforce shortage to remove barriers to licensures for RDAs, RDAF, and expand access to care. And I've been looking at that and the pass rate. So there's a low pass rate, but then this part, the statement in the strategic plan seems just really odd that it says that there's a workforce shortage and that maybe that the licensure pass rate is like part of the shortage, and then it doesn't seem like it's related. Like it seems to me like access to care is more like a dental, like a thing for access to dental care versus like dental assistants being responsible for access to care. So I just wanted to mention that now because I know that that's going to be something that's might be discussed in the dental board strategic plan when they have that as part of their agenda item. And then also there's another 1.4 discusses evaluate and change if necessary dental assisting licensure requirements, which include educational and exam requirements to decrease barriers to licensure and increase license portability. And I just wanted to know if if the DAF will be able to participate in. I know we can't participate during the dental board meeting, so I'm just wondering if that should be something that can be discussed within the Dental Assisting Council first before that's addressed by the dental board. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Is there somebody, can we discuss this now, or is there someone that can shed some light on us whether or not this should be discussed now?
This is Karen Fisher, Executive Officer. The agenda item is update on dental assisting examination statistics. So I'm not really clear why member Miyazaki brought this up during this section. Could you explain a little further, perhaps, what it is that you wanted to discuss?
That's Miyazaki. I just wanted to bring up this part of the strategic plan because it seems like it's tied to the exam statistics for the RDA written exam. And that's the reason why I brought it up. I didn't know like if this could be something that could be discussed within the DAF before the dental board. And so that's the reason why I brought it up, because they're talking about in the strategic plan about the exam requirements. And so, and I know that it's a concern about the low pass rates for the RDA exam.
Okay, I'm just going to weigh in and say, unfortunately, we don't have the strategic plan agendized on the Dental Assisting Council agenda. So staff will take note of what your comments are, and we'll follow up with you coming back around to see if we can have a better understanding of what your concerns are and how we can get that information to the board. Does that suffice, Ms. Miyazaki?
This is Miyazaki. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Okay. Thank you. I had a comment too from Ms. Valerie. I wanted to thank you for pointing out the OAP information being maybe incorrect, because I had a big dissertation on that one. So I'm glad that it is incorrect. And I look forward to the 2022 meeting where we could discuss that further. I'm hoping to see those pass rates go up, especially because we've just launched a new exam. Okay. If there are no other council member discussion on this agenda item, I'd like to find out, or open this up to find out if there's any public comments. DCA moderator, can you please facilitate the lines for public comment?
Moderator, and at the direction of the council, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. All right, so now we're going to move on to agenda item 7, update on dental assisting licensing statistics. I'm going to ask Ms. Valerie to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fowler. This memo provides an overview of the licensing statistics for the dental assisting unit. Beginning on page 14 and continuing through page 20 of the meeting materials, you will find tables and charts indicating the number of applications received, approved, issued, canceled, withdrawn, and denied for fiscal year 2021 through September 30th and the prior 3 fiscal years. On page 21, you will find the licensing and permit statistics, which indicate the number of active, inactive, delinquent, and canceled licenses for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 through September 30th and the prior 3 fiscal years. Beginning on page 22 and continuing through page 24, you will find data indicating the current and active registered dental assistant licensees by county and population per RDA license for 2021 and 2022 fiscal year, through September 30th and the 2 prior fiscal years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any council member comments? Please use your raised hand feature. Seeing no raised hands, I'm going to ask if there's any public comments. DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, it looks like we do have one request for public comment from individual identified as Claudia Powell. Claudia, I'll request to unmute your microphone. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device, and you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I'll be requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
This is Claudia Pohl. I have a question, Tina, or a comment, I guess. I can't ask a question. On the license types for the DSA, I was trying to find what page it is. It's on page 21. So it shows that for fiscal year 18-19, there were 1,167 active DSAs, and then it was 36, 38, and 38 for the following years. I'm just questioning if that statistic is indeed accurate, and if it is not accurate, if we could get an updated statistic on that. Thank you very much.
All right, this is the moderator, and that was our only individual who has requested public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Now we're going to move on to agenda item 8, presentation by the Department of Consumer Affairs, Office of Professional Examination Services, OPES, regarding RDA-EF Occupational Analysis. I will ask the representative from OPES to present this agenda item.
I do have a presentation that is to be shared. Is that available?
Moderator, I believe if you move on to the next slide, it should display the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Okasich, and I am with the Office of Professional Examination Services. And this morning, I will be presenting on the results of the occupational analysis that was recently conducted for the RDA-EF profession. For those who may not be familiar with our office, OPS is a unit within the Department of Consumer Affairs, and we exist to help licensing boards develop examination programs that are valid, legally defensible, and fair to candidates. In some instances, we work with boards to develop their licensing exams, or we may also work with them to review national exams or consider options when modifying or looking at all examination alternatives. So it looks like you've advanced to the next slide, so thank you. In performing our work, we adhere to requirements set forth in regulations, technical standards, and guidelines that have been accepted by the courts and within the testing industry. In California, licensing boards are required to adhere to Business and Professions Code, Section 139, which mandates that their examination programs undergo periodic review and demonstrate a sufficient level of validity evidence. Part of Section 139 includes conducting an occupational analysis of the profession every 5 years. In addition, we also review examination programs against the standards for educational and psychological testing and principles for the validation and use of personnel selection procedures. These standards and principles specify both technical and psychometric criteria for demonstrating evidence of validity for licensing exams. Next slide, please. There are a number of factors that go into establishing validity, but there are some basic components that must be met. The first of these is that examinations must provide a reliable method for identifying or differentiating practitioners who are able to practice safely and competently from those who are not. Second, the examination must focus on entry-level tasks and knowledge required to perform. I'm sorry. I had a dental procedure recently, and it's actually affecting my speech. I apologize. But the task and knowledge important for protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And then third, development processes must involve the input of subject matter experts. And these are people or practitioners who are actually working in the profession. In addition, these development processes should occur under the guidance of psychometricians or testing specialists who ensure that the technical criteria for development are met. Next slide, please. So before I get into the specifics of the study, I just want to give you an overview of the examination development process for context. Developing a licensing examination is an ongoing cycle to ensure that examination content always reflects current practice. So this cycle begins with an occupational analysis, which is a systematic study of the profession to identify three things. First, we're looking at what are the main areas that are involved in performing in practice. Then next, we are looking at what are the specific tasks that are involved in performing within each of those areas. And then third, what knowledge is required to perform those tasks safely and effectively. The results of the occupational analysis study are then used in all subsequent development processes. First, the results form the basis of the examination outline, which becomes a blueprint for development. During item writing, subject matter experts are trained in how to write items for licensing examinations, and then they write to specific tasks and knowledge from the examination outline. By doing this, we create a direct link between the content of the exam and the competencies that are required for practice. Items that are written by subject matter experts are then taken to a panel with another group of subject matter experts who review the new items for content and clarity and to ensure that each item accurately reflects the competency it's intended to. As part of the review process, we also advocate that new items be pre-tested to ensure that they function as intended. So when we pre-test an item, they go onto an exam form, but they are not scored. And this allows us to evaluate the statistical performance of all of these items. Once items have passed the review process, they then go into a pool of items that are used to construct examination forms. And the examination outline is used during this process to pick items according to the weights for each of the content areas that are established during the occupational analysis. By doing this, we ensure that the examination proportionally represents the different aspects or different areas of practice. Then once the exam has been constructed, a passing score is determined. For licensing exams, it is recommended that the passing score be set using what's referred to as a Criterion reference methodology. Using this method, the criteria of minimum competence is used in conjunction with subject matter expert judgments about characteristics of the examination in determining the passing score. During this process, the examination outline is once again used very heavily in making judgments about minimum competence for entry into the profession. Next slide, please. So the occupational analysis is an important and foundational part of examination development. It provides a description of practice that allows us to develop items that measure the competencies required for practice. It is a required component of building exams that are legally defensible, valid, and fair, and it helps to establish evidence of validity by linking that examination content with the critical competencies for practice. In addition, the results of occupational analyses can be used by boards to provide a basis for making legislative changes, evaluating education and experience requirements, or establishing assessment-related policies. Next slide, please. In conducting occupational analyses, we begin by researching background information about the profession. We're looking at laws that govern scope of practice, and we look at education and experience requirements, but we're also looking at emerging trends within the profession. As part of these processes, we also conduct a number of interviews with practitioners who are performing the job to find out what exactly is currently involved in effective performance. Based on that background research, we then develop task and knowledge statements that are further refined and developed in multiple workshops with subject matter experts. Once the statements have been fully developed, we administer a survey to practitioners throughout California who are asked to rate each task and knowledge statement according to how it applies to their job. Information from that survey is then analyzed and taken to another group of subject matter experts who review the results. The tasks and knowledge statements that are retained following that workshop serve to form a description of practice that then becomes the basis for the examination outline. Next slide, please. In 2021, OPES worked with the board to conduct an occupational analysis of the RDA-EF profession. At the time the study began, the board had an email addresses on file for 557 RDA-EF2s, and these practitioners were sent an email invitation containing a link to an online survey. We received responses from 212 of those practitioners. However, in some instances, the respondents either indicated they were not currently working or they did not provide enough response data to be considered usable. So in total, 119 responses were included in final analyses, which gave us a response rate of 21.4%. And that isn't a good response rate for these type of surveys, especially for small professions. There are a number of factors that we look at when we perform data analyses, and the patterns that we observed led us to feel confident that the response rate received was sufficiently representative of overall practice. Next slide, please. When we administer surveys, we collect demographic information from respondents to provide context for interpreting our results and to ensure that the results are representative of practice. So we would gather information about experience and training of our respondents, the work setting in which they work, and geographic location of practice. Next slide. The first question we asked on the survey was about years of experience. Because the results provide a description of practice, we want to ensure that we have representation of different levels of experience. However, because a primary purpose is to focus on becoming a basis for the examination outline that's used to measure competencies for entry-level practice, we also want to ensure that we have adequate representation of practitioners licensed 5 years or less. The results obtained in the RDA-EF occupational analysis appear to be representative of the experience level of practitioners throughout the state. So approximately 49.6% of respondents reported that they had been licensed 6 years or longer, while 50.4% reported that they had been licensed 5 years or less. Next slide, please. The second question we asked was how long respondents had worked as an RDA before becoming licensed in extended functions. And the results indicated that approximately 29% of respondents had worked as an RDA for 5 or fewer years, while 71% had worked as an RDA for 6 years or longer. Next slide, please. In gathering information about experience, we also asked about other licenses and certifications held in addition to the RDA-EF license. The majority of respondents, 76%, reported that they also maintained an RDA license, and approximately 27% reported that they held an ultrasound scaling certificate. Fewer respondents indicated that they held an orthodontic permit, that was about 7%, or a dental sedation assistant permit. That was about 3% of the respondents. Next slide, please. We then asked respondents about their work setting. And when we asked about what their primary work setting, about 80% indicated they worked in a private dental practice. Half of the respondents indicated that it was a private practice with 2 or more dentists, while approximately 33% reported that they worked in a private practice with a single dentist. Approximately 10% of respondents reported they worked in a public health dentistry setting, and then we had some other responses too, and these tended to be settings that included state prison, rural health clinics, or government veteran affairs organizations. Next slide, please. We then followed up with a question about the type of work performed in the respondent's work setting. Most respondents, 86%, reported their primary practice setting as general dentistry, with approximately 3% reporting their primary setting was pedodontic dentistry, and another 3% reporting that it was either prosthodontic dentistry or oral surgery. Next slide, please. In gathering information about work settings, we also asked respondents about the team environment in which they work. Most respondents reported that they were the only RDA-EF or that they worked with one other RDA-EF. Approximately 20% of the respondents reported that there were between 2 to 3 other RDAFs employed in their primary work setting. Next slide, please. In addition, the majority, approximately 60%, worked with 3 or fewer RDAs in their practice setting, while 20% reported that there were more than 5 RDAs who worked in their primary work setting. Next slide. And then approximately 32% of the respondents reported that their primary work setting did not employ unlicensed dental assistants, while approximately 63% reported that between 1 to 3 unlicensed dental assistants were employed in their work setting, and then another 5% reported that there were 4 or more unlicensed dental assistants who worked in their office. Next slide, please. One of the things we want to track with occupational analyses is changes in professions over time. So we worked with subject matter experts to identify some of the services provided in the primary work setting and technology being used. In the survey, the vast majority of respondents reported that they perform manual impressions. 92% indicated that they do that. And then it's about 66% reported that digital impressions were also being used. And another 44% of respondents reported that CAD/CAM restorations were being used in their primary setting. Next slide, please. We then asked respondents about the geographic location of their work. And when we analyzed the results of respondents by geographic region, we found that all regions of the state were represented, and it appears consistent with the distribution of practitioners throughout California. Next slide, please. So these respondents or practitioners who completed the survey were asked to provide ratings on task statements that resulted from the interviews and workshops that were held with practitioners. They were asked to rate each task statement according to how frequently they perform it in their work setting and how important it is for effective performance relative to other tasks that they perform. The rating scale for frequency ranged from 0, indicating that the task was not something they performed, to 5, indicating that the task was performed very frequently. On the importance rating scale, a rating of 0 indicated that the task was not important for performance, while a rating of 5 indicated that the task was critically important. Next slide, please. Respondents were also asked to provide an importance rating for associated knowledge statements. The scale used for these ratings ranged from 0, indicating the knowledge was not required for performance of the job, to 5, indicating that it was critically important. Next slide, please. Data obtained from the respondents were analyzed, and overall criticality values for task and knowledge statements were calculated and taken to a workshop with subject matter experts who evaluated the results. During this workshop, subject matter experts reviewed the results to determine which task and knowledge statements were critical for practice, and they confirmed linkage between the task and knowledge statements to make sure that every critical task linked with the critical knowledge and vice versa. Once the task and knowledge statements had been finalized, the subject matter experts then organized the task and knowledge statements within content areas to form a description of practice. Next slide, please. The final description of practice was organized into 4 main areas. The first is preliminary patient evaluations. The second is treatment procedures. The third is health and safety. And the fourth is laws and regulations. The subject matter experts then considered whether these content areas should be tested on the licensing exam, and they agreed that they should be. The subject matter experts discussed how to organize these statements within each of the content areas to create sections for the examination outline. They also reviewed some preliminary weights for each of the content areas that were derived based on the ratings in the occupational analysis, and they made adjustments to more accurately reflect the proportional importance of each content area and section in practice. Next slide, please. So the resulting examination outline, which you see here, assigned a weight of 25% to the content area preliminary patient evaluations, and that weight is distributed across 2 sections. The largest weight, 57%, was assigned to the content area treatment procedures, and it was distributed across 3 sections. The content area health and safety was assigned a weight of 8%, and the final content area laws and regulations was assigned a weight of 10%. Next slide, please. So as part of the occupational analysis process, OPS performs an overall evaluation of the examination program and makes recommendations to boards about potential changes to their exam programs if the data warrant it. And based on the results of the occupational analysis, in conjunction with other analyses that OPS has performed regarding incorporating information from the clinical and practical exams into the written examination, OPS is making 2 recommendations to the board. The first recommendation is to adjust the content of the written examination. We recommend increasing the number of items in order to be able to assess those competencies from the written and practical examinations. The current written exam, the one that has been out, is comprised of 50 scored items and 10 pretest items, and we recommend that the board increase this to 100 scored items and 25 pretest items. In order to accommodate this increase in number of questions, our second recommendation is that the board increase the time that candidates are allowed to take the exam from 60 minutes to 150 minutes or 2.5 hours. Next slide, please. And that concludes the presentation. I want to thank you for allowing me to come present this morning. Are there any questions?
Are there any council member comments? Please use the raised hand feature. Not seeing any raised hands, are there any public comments? DCA moderator, would you please facilitate the lines for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item number 9, update regarding RDA-EF licensure requirements and administration of the new RDA-EF written examination. I'm going to ask Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer, to present this agenda item.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Wallace, and I am the Assistant Executive Officer of the Board. Today I'm going to present an update regarding the RDA-EF licensure requirements. As we've discussed before, over the course of the last year, the Board sponsored legislation, Senate Bill 607, which would remove the clinical and practical examination requirements from the RDA-EF licensure. In September 2021, the governor signed the bill, and effective January 1st of 2022, the board may license an RDA-EF, an applicant who submits written evidence of the following eligibility requirements. They have to have current licensure as an RDA or have met the requirements to become an RDA. have successfully completed a board-approved course in the application of pit and fissure sealant, have successfully completed a board-approved RDA-EF program, successfully complete the written examination for RDA-EF administered by the board, and submit fingerprint clearances from both the Department of Justice and the FBI. As we just discussed through the OPS presentation, the board worked with DCA OPS to conduct the occupational analysis of the RDA-EF profession. Based on the results of this OA, the new RDA-EF written examination will be launched on January 1st of 2022 that will incorporate the additional content areas that were measured by the practical and clinical examinations, which are now eliminated. RDA-EF applicants who have already taken and passed the current RDA-EF written examination will not be required to take a new exam. The board continues to accept and process applications for RDA-EF licensure. Applicants who submit complete applications are issued eligibility to take the current RDA-EF exam. However, licenses will not be issued until January 1st, when the requirement for the clinical and practical examination is removed. For those that currently have an application on file with the board for RDA-EF licensure, the board has already issued refunds for the practical and clinical examination fees for applicants who did not choose to take the practical and clinical exams in July and August of this year. They were processed in mid-October, and applicants can expect to receive refunds in approximately 8 to 10 weeks. There is no need to contact the board to request a refund. Beginning on January 3rd, which is the first work day of the week, Monday, the board will begin issuing licenses to applicants who have successfully met all of the licensure requirements that are in effect as of January 1, 2022. On the 1st of January, applicants for RDA-EF licensure will be required to take the new RDA-EF written examination. It will be launched on January 1st. Based on the findings of the OA that OPS just reviewed, they developed an examination outline, which is also attached to the meeting materials. This information will be posted on the board's website. The exam outline is structured into 4 content areas weighted relative to the other content areas. Candidates who fail the current RDA-EF written examination and retake the examination after January 1 of 2022 will be required to take the new RDA-EF written exam. And as is usual with the launch of new exams, exam scores for the new RDA-EF written examination will be held pending evaluation from examination performance by OPS, and we expect that the results will be released by mid-February of 2022. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Are there any council member comments? Please use the raised hand feature. All right, seeing no raised hands, are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. This is the moderator. Seeing no requests, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Now we'll move on to agenda item 10, discussion and possible action regarding legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1 to specify time limits for acceptance of course certifications for OA permit and DSA permit applications, and clarify board-approved course requirements for RDA applicants. I'm going to ask Ms. Wallace to continue with this agenda item.
Thank you. As board staff process applications, we come across issues occasionally with statute where we have questions regarding clarity and consistency, and board staff have run across a certain situation in which we would like to bring it to the council's attention to review for the potential to have a recommended legislative proposal forwarded to the board to clarify the current time limit requirements and the specific course requirements. Currently, the board licenses and regulates registered dental assistants, RDAEF, orthodontic assistant permits, and dental sedation assistant permits. And these application requirements are all outlined in statute. Specifically, RDA application requirements are listed in Business and Professions Code Section 1752.1. Among other things, an applicant for an RDA licensure is required to provide written evidence of successful completion of the following courses that have to be taken within 5 years prior to the date of the application. That includes the course in the Dental Practice Act, the Board of Person Infection Control, and a course in Basic Life Support. Additionally, Business and Professions Code Section 1750.2 and 1750.4 outline the requirements for orthodontic assistant permit holders and dental sedation assistant permit holders. Among other things, these two statutory sections require successful completion of a 2-hour board-approved course in the Dental Practice Act and an 8-hour board-approved course in infection control, as well as successful completion of the course in Basic Life Support. Board staff are recommending that the council consider whether a recommendation should be forwarded to the board to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1750.2, 1750.4 to specify the time frame within which these courses should successfully be completed prior to applying to the board, much like the requirement for the RDAs in BNP Code Section 1752.4. Additionally, board staff is recommending the council may wish to consider whether the code section for 1752.1 relating to RDA licensure should be amended to specify that it is a 2-hour course for the Dental Practice Act and an 8-hour course in infection control that is required for RDA licensure. Board staff has prepared legislative proposal language within the meeting materials with blue italic text for new text and red strike through for deleted text. Essentially, what board staff is presenting today is just a simple amendment to clarify the requirements and provide consistency between the RDA, OA, and DSA application requirements to specify that these particular courses need to be completed within 5 years prior to the date of application, and to clarify that the Dental Practice Act is a 2-hour course and that the infection control course is an 8-hour course. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any council member discussion? Please use the raised hand feature. I'm not seeing any raised hand. Oh, Ms. Wallace? Did you?
I was just going, Vice Chair Fowler, I was going to clarify that if the council wishes to move forward with this recommendation, board staff would recommend that it be forwarded to the board as a legislative proposal to be included as a new issue in the board sunset review report, which is expected to be submitted next year for inclusion in the legislation that goes forward for the board sunset review in 2024.
Thank you. So this is an action item. Can we move, or I would like to move that we include this on the agenda for future board directors meeting to have that to accept those revisions as you put in our meeting notes regarding the OA to match the RDA requirements, and also to correct the verbiage regarding the requirements for RDA to state 8-hour infection control, not 2. So there's probably a better way of stating that, but I'm motioning to discuss that at a future board meeting, put that on the agenda. And Kara? Ms. Welch, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. Maybe to clean up the motion, I'm reading from page 126 of the meeting materials. So perhaps the motion should be moved to recommend to the board a legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1 to clarify the RDA, OA, and DSA course completion requirements for license and permit application. Ms. Fowler, would you accept that phrasing of your motion?
Yes. I move that the council is to discuss and consider recommending, or excuse me, that the board legislation proposal to amend BP section 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1 to clarify the RDA, OA, and DSA course completion requirements for licensure and permit application. And Kara, you second, correct?
Yes, Miyazaki, yes, a second.
Okay. So before we, let's see. We need to ask for public comments before we record votes. So are there any public comments regarding this issue, this agenda item? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the DCA COMOD. We are now open for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please type comment into the comment section in the Q&A box and send it to all panelists. Looks like we have a request for comment from Claudia. Hold on just a moment. Claudia, I have sent you a request to unmute your microphone. Please go ahead.
Thank you, David. Claudia Pohl, the California Dental Assistants Association. Thank you to staff for bringing this forward. We appreciate that, and we would very much be in favor of this. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no additional requests for comment, would you like me to close the feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. Board staff, would you please call the roll and record votes for this agenda item?
This is Marella Turan. The motion is move to recommend to the board a legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code sections 1750.2, 1750.4, and 1752.1 to clarify the RDA, OA, and DSA course completion requirements for a license and permit application. I will now call the roll. Fowler?
Aye.
Miyazaki? Olagi? Olagi, yes. Pacheco? Reed Espinoza?
Reed Espinoza, aye.
The motion passed.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll now move on to agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding RDA-EF administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide. I'm going to ask Ms. Wallace to continue with this agenda item.
Thank you. In November 2018, the Council heard a presentation from Ms. Joan Greenfield regarding the addition of administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide to the scope of practice for RDA-EF as an optional post-licensure permit with conditions determined by the board. During the meeting, the Council discussed the necessity and directed staff to conduct more in-depth surveys of both dentists and a larger sample of RDA-EF to assess their opinions on adding the administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide to the scope of practice. In addition, the Council directed the formation of a working group consisting of dentists, hygienists, EFs, and other interested stakeholders to research and evaluate the proposal. At its August 2021 meeting, staff advised the board that it does not have the current sufficient staff resources to carry out the Council's direction regarding the development of a survey and the formation of a working group. Board staff determined that in order to move forward with the request, a board member would be needed to assist staff with the surveys and the working group. The board held a robust discussion of the issues and ultimately decided that the Council's direction was unclear and needed additional information. Some board members favored moving forward with the Council's recommendation, but would need that additional information from the Council. The motion failed that would have moved forward with the Council's recommendation for staff to conduct the in-depth surveys and form the working group. At this point, board staff is bringing this information back to the Council. The Council is asked to reevaluate whether a survey and a study of these issues needs to be performed, and if so, the Council is asked to define the specific issues to be studied and surveyed, with a list of pertinent survey questions regarding allowing EF, the administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, to be added to their scope of practice. Given the lack of board staff resources and the complexity of these issues, the Council may wish to establish a two-member working group to discuss the specific issues to be studied, create the relevant survey questions, and return that information back to the Council with a list of specific issues to be studied and the recommended survey to be discussed at a future Dental Assistant Council meeting. Once the Council members decide what survey questions want to be asked, board staff can assist with distributing the actual survey to the email addresses that we have on file for the licensees. But at this point, we're asking the Council to consider whether they want to form a two-member working group to formulate those questions for the board or for the Council to discuss moving forward. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So is there any council member discussion? Please use the raised hand feature. I would like to, Jerry Fowler, Vice Chair, I would like to propose that we put together the two-member committee to take this and work on the list of questions for a survey. You know, patient care and well-being is the #1 concern of the Dental Board of California. and patient comfort and happiness is every dental practitioner's goal. So there's other questions that need to be addressed that relate to the administration of local anesthesia. And I know that when dental hygiene got the California approval or the legislation passed to allow them to do local anesthesia, Dr. Richard Oliver, he was a periodontist who later went on to become the dental dean for both USC and University of Wisconsin, was instrumental in getting local anesthesia approved for registered dental hygienists in California. He and 2 other periodontists employed 5 hygienists, and they found that they were spending approximately 1.5 hours a day giving local anesthesia to the dental hygiene patients. The data that he collected was presented to the Dental Board of California to get local anesthesia approved. The bill allowing local anesthesia administration for dental hygienists was passed in the mid-70s. So the questions, how long does the patient have to wait in addition for additional local anesthesia to be administered? And then also there's questions regarding procedure efficiency. How much extra time is added to the procedure by waiting for local anesthesia to be administered and take effect? And we all know that painful dental procedures and long appointments are practice killers and can cause dental phobias in patients. So I think it is a very worthy topic that we need to discuss further. And so I would like to be a member of that committee. I see Tracy Reed Espinoza has her hand up. Tracy, would you like to make comment?
Jerry, I agree 100% with everything you just said, and I would like to put my name in on that committee as well, please.
Okay. So I move that Tracy Reed Espinoza and myself, Jerry Fowler, be the 2-member committee that works on this, and we will report back, I imagine, to the next Dental Assistant Council committee our findings. And Tracy, you have your hand up still?
I'm sorry, I'm working on getting it off.
Okay. Is there any other board member comments? And Tracy, are you seconding that motion? Or is your hand stuck up?
I will second that motion, but also
okay.
my hand is stuck.
Okay.
Apologize for that. There we go. It's off now.
Okay. So I don't see any other raised hands, so I'd like to open this to public comment. DCA moderator, can you please open the lines for public comment?
This is a moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. So the motion was to have Jerry Fowler and Tracy Reed Espinoza be a 2-member committee to discuss agenda item 11, the administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide for the RDAEF, and then we will report back to the Dental Assistant Council.
Ms. Fowler, this is Karen Fisher. If I could just interrupt briefly. Just to make the motion a little clearer, so this 2-member working group is being formed to discuss the specific issues to be studied, create relevant survey questions, and return to the council with a list of specific issues to be studied and survey questions. Is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Reed Espinoza, do you agree that that's your motion?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. We just need to be a little bit more specific, and staff tries to put as much specificity in the action requested. So oftentimes it's okay to go ahead and read what's in the action requested, because then we can, make sure we don't leave anything out. So with that going, I believe, Vice Chair, you can ask for the roll call.
Okay. Board staff, will you please take the roll and record the votes for this agenda item?
Corinne, the motion is to establish a 2-member working group to discuss the specific issues to be studied, create relevant survey questions, and return to the council with a list of specific issues to be studied and survey questions. I will now call the roll. Fowler?
Aye.
Miyasaki?
Miyasaki, aye.
Olagi? Olagi, yes. Pacheco? Reed Espinoza?
Reed Espinoza, aye.
The motion passed.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to agenda item number 12. Discussion and possible action regarding, yes, that's the right one. Discussion and possible action regarding administration of written examinations in different languages. I'm going to ask Ms. Wallace to present this agenda item.
Thank you. During prior meetings, members of the Dental Assistant Council have requested information regarding the administration of our written examinations in different languages. Through different conversations, we have asked Dr. Tracy Montez, who is the Chief of the Department of Consumer Affairs Program and Policy Review Division. She has provided a background memo in the meeting materials and additional information, and she is here today to provide the council with a presentation on this issue. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Montez.
Good morning, Vice Chair Fowler and council members, board leadership, and staff. I also have a PowerPoint. If you could bring that up, please.
This is the moderator. I believe it is going to be our next slide. There we go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. So appreciate the opportunity to present today at the Dental Assisting Council meeting. Again, I'm Tracy Montez, Division Chief of Programs and Policy Review, and the Office of Professional Examination Services is one of the units in my division. So occasionally I assist with various presentations. This is a brief one this morning, but it's going to cover some very important topics. So if you would go to the next slide, please. I'm going to briefly define examination adaptation versus translation, talk about the purpose of adapting examinations, those very important licensure guidelines and standards, some considerations when making decisions to adapt exams, and then open it up to any questions that you have. Next slide, please. So when we talk about translating an exam, we really mean adaptation, and it's a technical term used to describe a process of preparing a test in one language and culture to use for a different language and culture. Examination translation is only one step in the adaptation process. And so in the handout that was included, we described what we do at OPS, and that is that we take an examination that is in English and we bring in subject matter experts who are licensees, active and in good standing in the respective profession, and we have them go through the exam items one by one and translate them to the best of their ability in the desired language. And then we take another step and translate it back into English with another set of subject matter experts to determine whether or not the true intent of the question was captured. And we know that that's a very difficult process because depending upon the language and the culture, different words have different meanings. And sometimes, especially in a very technical profession, we just don't have exact words that we can translate to. So if you go to the next slide, which talks about the purpose. So the purpose or decision to adapt an examination is typically tied to fairness, which is a fundamental validity issue in the use of tests. In California, we work extremely hard to be diverse and to have equitable and fair examinations. We work hard to reduce any barriers to licensure, and sometimes translation or adaptation is important in that process. And so we consider things like the individual characteristics associated with the persons being tested, again, their language and their culture. And we take this into account through all phases of the validation process. And if you remember in Karen's presentation, she had the cycle of exam development or exam validation, and she talked about developing exams, administration, and scoring. It's really important that the audience understand that we are looking at fairness and cultural considerations throughout that process. So even if we don't adapt or translate exams, we are still being sensitive to cultural differences. And that's, again, why we use a variety of subject matter experts in the process. And we utilize editors when they review questions to look for certain cues that could be problematic, and a number of other strategies. But the overall goal is to really ensure that test results produce valid scores and decisions. And so all of our efforts put forward are to ensure this goal. The next slide, please. And as Karen mentioned too, these very important licensure guidelines and standards, each of these talk about various factors and features to consider when you are adapting or translating exams, and they provide very important strategies and guidance for us. Okay, the next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about some of the information that's contained in these. The standards emphasize that linguistic and cultural differences should be taken into full account, as cultural behaviors and thinking may not be comparable between languages, and translated words may appear to be the same but can have significantly different meanings. And this is something I had mentioned earlier. The guidelines for translating and adapting tests set forth by the ITC outline the process and the evaluation procedures for examination adaptation. Failure to adhere to these standards, guidelines, and procedures can lead to offering an examination that is not equivalent in content, difficulty level, reliability, validity, which may result in erroneous licensure. And as an example, we know, and this is discussed in public meetings, but the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology right now does adapt their Spanish exams, and they have been struggling with a very low pass rate. And we have looked at numerous strategies and factors for why this might be happening. And we're having some difficulty really pinning down what is going on. We actually again, adapted the exam, their vendor did, and then we have set forth a situation where they present the English version next to the adapted exam, but they're still having trouble. And really, the only reason that we can come up with at this point is that it is very difficult to do a word-for-word translation. And there are various types of nuances in the language that make it difficult. So again, an initial thought of, hey, let's translate or adapt because we have a very large population of Spanish speakers really hasn't been beneficial for that board. We're still working to help them and assist them, but it wasn't just an easy fix as initially thought by members and stakeholders. So that's just, again, one example. So let's go into considerations that relates to this example as well, and that's the next slide. So as the council considers this, whether or not to adapt an examination, it's very important to consider the following. If a language survey has been conducted and the target language group has been identified to have a substantial number, which is about 5% of a non or limited English speaking candidates, an examination may be adapted. So that's typically your first cue. Okay, we've got a large group of non or limited English speaking candidates. Then you need to look at other factors such as, is English an essential aspect of the profession? If it is, then an examination will not be adapted. So for example, Business and Professions Code 1630 states that the examination of applicants for licensure to practice dentistry in the state of California shall be sufficiently thorough to test the fitness of the applicant to practice dentistry, and both questions and answers shall be written in the English language. So dentist examinations must be in English only. Now, if the candidate population is too small to produce reliable data for determining equivalency, then again, an unadapted examination may be most valid. So if you have a less than 5%, a very small group, again, you're trying to be responsive, but if we can't get reliable data to really look at the statistics, then it's going to be difficult to support evidence of validity. And then another consideration, which is very important, is cost to maintain adapted examinations and item banks. We often hear the legislature talk about, why don't you offer your exam in multiple language? This is California. We have a very diverse population. You should have your exams in every possible language. Well, again, it is not an examination we're talking about. It is a bank of test items. It is an ongoing cycle, and therefore it can be extremely costly to bring in subject matter experts to examine or translate each of those exam forms each time they are rotated. And so that's a very important consideration. Again, we look to be responsive to our population. So again, we consider a number of factors, but it's very important to keep in mind it is not a single exam, but a process. And so I've gone through this rather quickly, but it's always important to keep in mind the needs of California licensees and applicants and their needs for possibly utilizing examinations in different languages. But it's equally important that we consider all of these factors when making these decisions, because they can have unintended consequences, and that is producing an exam that truly is not equivalent. Again, we talk about adaptation versus translation. And with that, we can go to the next slide, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Montez. Are there any council member discussion? Please use the raised hand feature. Kara Miyazaki, you have your hand raised.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's really a lot of information that's really valuable. And I was wondering, so you discussed Dr. Montez, you discussed the Spanish, the cosmetology exam for Spanish. How are the other languages doing, the Vietnamese and the Korean? Are there statistics for those? Like the pass rates, are they comparable or?
I don't have the pass rates in front of me, but I know that they are not of concern to the board. So that tells me that they are reasonable. They're most likely on the board's website. I believe they post that information, but I just know that we have been really focused on the Spanish. I will tell you that right now the board uses a national vendor. They don't use OPS to develop their exams. So we work in a consulting fashion with them.
Thank you.
All right, not seeing any other raised hands. Can we open this to public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the council, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Okay, now we'll move on to agenda item 13, election of 2022 council chair and vice chair. I'm going to ask Mrs. Karen Fisher, executive officer, to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Okay, this memo outlines essentially what the responsibilities of the chair and the vice chair are. What I'm going to do is we'll start with the chair and then we'll go to the vice chair and we'll have to take roll call votes for each. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for the chair of the Dental Assistant Council, which essentially the chair will take over January 1st of 2022. Are there any nominations? Please raise your hand. Looks like Rosalinda Olagi. Ms. Olagi, go ahead.
Thank you. Olagi would like to nominate for chair Jerry Fowler.
Thank you, Ms. Olagi. Ms. Fowler, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. We're on a roll. Okay, are there any additional nominations for the chair of the Dental Assistant Council? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the nominations and ask staff to call the roll.
And I will now call the roll for Jerry Fowler as the chair. Miyazaki.
Aye.
Olagi.
Olagi, aye.
Pacheco. Reed Espinoza.
Reed Espinoza, aye.
Jerry Fowler will be the chair for the upcoming year.
Thank you, Ms. Duran. We will now open nominations for the vice chair of the Dental Assistant Council. Ms. Miyazaki, I saw your hand go up for a nanosecond.
That's not.
Okay. Ms. Fowler, I saw your hand go up for a nanosecond.
We're having trouble with the raised hand feature. Yes, I would like to nominate Councilmember Tracy Reed Espinoza for vice chair.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Ms. Reed Espinoza, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right, staff, are there any additional, apologize, staff don't intervene yet. Are there any additional nominations from the floor? Seeing and hearing none, staff, would you go ahead and call the roll?
This is Morella Turan. I will now call the roll for Tracy Reed Espinoza as the Vice Chair. Fowler?
Yes.
Miyazaki? Olagi? Olagi, aye. Pacheco? With these votes, Tracy Reed Espinoza will be the Vice Chair for the upcoming year.
Thank you, and congratulations to Ms. Fowler as the Chair and to Ms. Reed Espinoza as the Vice Chair. You will take over your responsibilities on January 1st of 2022.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations to Tracy Reed Espinoza for Vice Chair, and I'm looking forward to it myself. I believe that concludes the November 18th, 2021 Dental Assisting Council meeting. So this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.